is no more for Kevin De Bruyne. And of course, City, as we've been mentioning, Fulham away at the weekend. One more point required. You would expect them now, after that tonight, to see the job through. Yeah, you certainly would. I mean, I don't think Manchester City carry that fear factor at the moment like they used to. So Fulham will be looking to end their season, which has been a good season as well, on a high. But just needing a point now, you'd have to fancy them. I mean, it was a big result tonight. Champions League is an absolute must. I mean, all their players are on big money. They need money for signings, of course. You know, the rules as well. You need to be bringing good money in, good finances in to be able to buy the right players, and they certainly need to buy a few players as well. So we will see what happens. But yeah, you know, this is the minimum requirement as Champions League for next season. And encouraging at least tonight, Marmoush, he's got 7 Premier League goals now, all of them at the Etihad, ironically. And Gonzalez, another big money signing, getting in on the act at the end. They're going to be the future, aren't they? With new faces again, you would feel this summer. Well, I mean, obviously it's gone a little bit under the radar, but Rodri came back today. Yeah. Ballon d'Or winner. I mean, Oscar Bob came back. What a special young player he is. So he could maybe develop into that Kevin De Bruyne in that number 10. Maybe not a Kevin passer, but he's a very creative player as well. So he'll pass the torch. But, you know, obviously Nico is a good player, but that midfield is, you know, Rodri's going to be in there, but who else is going to be alongside him for the next few years? That's going to be a big part of this team going forward, because, you know, Kevin De Bruyne you just knew when he was playing, he had a chance to win the game. And they got to find somebody of that level, which is going to be tough. And it's not just as big a player as Kevin De Bruyne is Kevin De Bruyne leaving, is it? We expect more departures. It's quite a rebuild here that Pep Guardiola has got at City. That's what it feels to me. It feels like a rebuild to me. Sometimes results can go badly and it can just be an unlucky season with injuries or whatever it is. But I look at that team and think, even if it is still the right team, even if this team is good enough to go and win a league as it stands, I mean, it will only last for maybe another year. You know, the vast majority of their big players are getting on now. So I do think there's going to be a rebuild. I think that's already started. And Pep Guardiola is aware of that. That's probably one of the reasons why Kevin De Bruyne has been, you know, told that he's surplus to requirements now. So yeah, I think a rebuild is going to happen, and you know, while that rebuild is going on, they've got to try to be as successful as possible, i.e., qualifying for the Champions League every single season, making sure that Manchester City is still a destination that players want to go to, because all the time, while Liverpool are winning the league, while Arsenal are chasing them down, those two teams, if it continues like this, they're going to be, you know, a nicer place to go for the top players. So City have got to hang on in there while this rebuild is going on. And if Pep Guardiola can wave his magic wand and do it once again and actually win a league while he's doing it, well, that would just be incredible, because I do think they're way off at the moment. And do you think this is the biggest rebuild that Pep's had in his managerial career? Is it a little bit of uncharted territory for him? This size of rebuild? Probably, but I think he probably relished that, maybe, in a way. You know, he's always had, you know, you think about the Barcelona and the Bayern Munich team, absolutely incredible players that he's had, and at City as well, and this is probably the first time he probably doesn't have the best squad in the league that he's in. I think the one guarantee you can say is you got Erling Haaland at the top of the pitch. After that, it's not absolute guarantee who's going to play. Probably Vardiol, and then there's Rodri. There's probably only 4 Diaz. You know, we haven't seen much of John Stones. Obviously, they need 2 new fullbacks, without question. I think they need 2 wingers, and they need 2 centre mids. So, like Mo said, you know, there's going to need a lot of money to be spent on it. You think, you know, they had, you know, Cole Palmer there and Liam Delap. You know, some of those players that have gone and left. Morgan Rogers went to Middlesbrough for $1 million. You know, so before we praise them, rightly so, for getting it right in the recruitment, last few years they've just maybe not got it. Get into Dortmund. Exactly. So they've not got it the way they had it, and that's why this window is so important. They can't afford to miss, you know. So Hugo Viana's come in, sport director next season, probably looking at the team now. They need a lot of pieces. And one thing I think they need desperately is athleticism in the fullback positions in the midfield. I don't think they have that. I think at their peak they had brilliant ball players, but they had pace and power as well. And I just think this season I don't think they had enough of that in the team. That's a really good point Owen makes about the sporting director Hugo Viana, formerly of Newcastle United in his playing days. I mean, what a big job he has walked into at this stage where Manchester City are.
Yeah, I mean, you'd love to walk into something that's just a well-oiled machine, wouldn't you? That's just chugging along nicely and you just add the finishing touches to it. But he's almost got to rip most of the good things up and start again in many ways. I mean, he might be looking for a new manager as well in a year or two. You never know how long Pep Guardiola's going to stay. And of course, with that partnership with Cheeky Begiristan, then all of a sudden, if he's leaving as well, then you think to yourself, that's Pep's sort of confidant, that's his partner in crime, let's say. So, yeah, it's all change at City, and it might take a little bit of pain for their fans for a few years before they see the brilliant City again. It might be a bit longer than that because, as I say, I think this is a real rebuild, and all the great players that have carried Manchester City for so long and won all these trophies, within a year or two, you probably won't there won't be any of those fingerprints on that team. So it's going to be all change. Big thing to evolve now for Pep Guardiola, and we'll see. Because as you've touched on before, he's always walked into teams that are already set and got great players. And has he ever done a rebuild like this, of this magnitude? Has he got the energy to do it as well after all those years? To go and start again, not from the bottom, but just to start again with a whole blank canvas in many ways. That remains to be seen.
And in terms of what he has got to do, as you've pointed out, it's not just one or two, is it? Which is easy in a successful team. Like they've been champions and recruited a Grealish or a Haaland. Now they've got to go and get, 4 or 5?
Well, no, first of all, you think about the teams before. Look at Liverpool. We knew who was going to play every game. 10 out of 11 players, we knew who was going to play. Maybe rotate one. You look at City team, you don't know who's going to play this season. He rotated the goalkeeper, the back four, rotated all the time. The two fullbacks changed all the time. Kyle Walker left mid-season. The midfield was different every game. Obviously, to Rodri's injury, the wingers were different all the time. So you couldn't look and go, that's a City team like when they won the trophies, when they won the Premier League, when they won the Champions League, like Liverpool this season, like Arsenal in many ways. You know who's playing. City, every week, you wouldn't know who was fit or who was going to play. And I think they've got to get back to that. They've got to have 11 or 15 guys that they rotate that are going to play. And I think this season, for lots of reasons, obviously they've got a bit older. Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, they've all, Kevin De Bruyne, they've all just gotten a little bit older at the same time. And the injury to Rodri, I think, just sped that whole process up. So this summer is going to be big that they get the spine of the team correct. They've got Haaland. The question about who's going to be in goal. There's a lot of talk about Edison, that he was potentially going to go to Saudi. Rodri obviously is in there, but the rest of the team around that, they got to get pieces that, that are going to stay for 4 or 5 years.
And I know we all thought he went for experience tonight in this one-off game, but the fact that tonight's average age in the starting 11 was their oldest in 8 years, does that just back up your point and say everything, really?
Well, before the game, I was almost thinking, yeah, I get it, and I probably agree with it. But longer term, it's probably not the right thing to do. Short term, yeah, let's win the game. Let's, put the tried and trusted team out. But if it's come to that you're still relying on the old guard, even though you've already spent quite a lot of money, it's possibly quite worrying. And yeah, I mean, there's no getting away from it. There's going to be a big rebuild because these players can't go on forever. And they've been great servants to the club. And you could argue that this rebuild should have started sooner. All of a sudden it smacked Manchester City fans, Pep Guardiola in the face, as Owen said. It probably was sped up by Rodri getting injured, but maybe with a bit of foresight, bringing in 1 or 2 players before that and then doing it gradually might have been a better way to do it. Now all of a sudden it's, right, it's all wrong. Everybody's too old. We need now 5, 6, 7 players. That's a little bit too late because that takes a lot of time to bed in. So,
and I think that's really tricky. When you win, you get more loyal.
Yeah,
because the guys have won for you, so you don't really want to think, oh, maybe we'll move somebody on. But the problem is, there's probably 5 or 6 that got to that, and I think that's where Sir Alex was quite brilliant, actually.
Ruthless as well.
Yeah, this is it's not personal, but we're trying to compete for everything, and I think because they won so much, and like Kevin De Bruyne said there, they deserve a lot of praise, but this year they were just off it, and I think that's understandable. Sometimes you just need to refresh it with a couple of young guys that come in and kickstart you. And I think because they did so well, the club were very loyal and didn't change that. Even you think about Gundogan coming back, from Barca, and Cole Palmer leaving. Something as simple as that could have changed their season. But if they get the recruitment right, I think they could be back at the top again next season.
The other thing, we sit here and we assume that, okay, you don't have to worry about the centre forward because he'll score.
Well, I was coming to that, actually.
All of us, do you not have to worry about him? I mean, now
because
Kevin
De Bruyne has been
the
main source, hasn't he?
Exactly, and people like Bernardo Silva and other players, even Phil Foden. I mean, he sat on the bench most of the season this season. That's not a good look at all. I mean, he really should be the person that's coming into the team now and right. Don't worry, I'll continue the baton. I've been here, seen it, done it. I've won all the trophies that we've won in recent years. Follow me type of thing. Now all of a sudden he's not in the team either.
And Marmoush is more of a scorer, isn't he?
He is, but I do worry for Erling Haaland now. And unless they find the right people to
give him the
fire
service.
him the bullets, then yeah, because every centre forward needs players to give them the service. I don't care how good you are. You can't win a game on your own. So as much as it's like, oh yeah, that position's a big tick, don't worry about that one. They're going to have to think carefully about who's right for the midfield, but who's right to actually connect, that midfield to Erling Haaland.
Well, that's a good point. You think about Stevie G and Fernando Torres, the impact he had on him. As good a player as he was, Fernando Torres. Went to Chelsea. Yeah, it wasn't the same Fernando Torres. I know they played different, but he didn't get that.
Nowhere near.
He didn't. That's what I mean. He didn't get that service. Stevie was playing him in all the time. So I do think it's really important that City find a passer. Doku's a dribbler. Savinho's a dribbler. Phil Foden is a dribbler. Who's going to be able to get a head up outside of Rodri and go and get it into Haaland? So that's a big question mark. I think the club has to figure out in the summer.
Mm. Well, there's a few items on the list here, isn't there?
There is. It's a big challenge for Pep Guardiola. And as I say, who can question but you do have to think, he's been there so long, he's been in management so long, to almost restart and repiece everything together. That's going to take a lot of energy, a lot of work on the training ground to get new people in and then drill them to how he likes them to be trained. And it's going to take an awful lot of energy to do all that, and it remains to be seen whether he's got the time, the energy, the desire to go again after all the success that he's had as well.
Mm. Because if you look at this squad at the moment, De Bruyne going, we expect the likes of Walker to go, etc. Where would they finish? Would there be a sort of battle for fifth like they are now?
What, next season? Depends on the summer. But I do think goal scoring wise they're way down on what they were last season. So obviously Haaland guarantees you goals, but who else is going to chip in with 20?
But Michael's point is Haaland guarantees you goals if chances are created for him.
Haaland could probably score goals in his sleep. He could score goals anywhere, but he probably might not score 50 or 40, but he'll still get you 30 in a down season. But I think the other boys got to chip in. Doku, Savinho, Phil Foden didn't get the goals that they normally get. Bernardo Silva, Gundogan. So they need. Obviously, Haaland get his 30, but they probably need another 3. They get you 15, and I don't think they have them the way they're playing at the moment. So I think they'll have a huge summer. I think there'll be a lot of ingoings and outgoings, but I do think the most important position for them is 2 fullbacks. I think a lot of everybody was playing out of position because they didn't have any fullbacks. So I think if they can address that, they still got a lot of centre backs: Akanji, Diaz, Stones, Ake. They got some great centre backs. I still think Ederson is the best keeper. Rodri in there, that's going to be good. But again, you need a number 10, you need 2 wingers, you need 2 fullbacks. I think they're the 5 you go and get if you can.
We've already got 2 new defenders, of course, in January as well.
Yeah, but they're young, Steve. You're not going to win the Premier League with them next season, I don't think. They're players for the future and good players, but they're not ready to play 38 games, I don't think.
And there will be 1 or 2 to leave, won't there? I mean, we've mentioned a lot of the older players, but there's a few players there that won't be happy. I mean, I'm thinking mainly of someone like Jack Grealish. How can he be happy sitting on the bench all the time? It's okay if you're coming on and you're playing the odd game.
Hadn't appeared in the last 5, didn't come on in the cup final.
And now players are coming on ahead of you and things like that. I mean, I know he got a fleeting appearance in injury time today, but that almost rubs salt in the wound. So I think there will be a few players going out. They might be able to recoup a little bit of money and then spend it again. But It is. It's a real big rebuild for Manchester City. No matter which way you look at it, this is a rebuild. If the season was to start again today, I would no way have them as challenging for the Premier League title as things stand. Now, after a big summer, then maybe you could start thinking about it. But I think that's asking a lot. I think they've dropped so far now that I think it's asking a lot for them to make that ground up. It might take a bit of time.
And in De Bruyne, he leaves the biggest hole, doesn't he? And the biggest legacy.
Yeah, because he's Pep's a passer. Pep was a passer. He's one of the best passers I ever played against, one of the best of his era. Played just like Rodri. And he wanted his team to pass. And he had the best passer of the game in Kevin De Bruyne, come over from Wolfsburg, and everybody thought, who's this? And he is easily one of the best passers we've ever seen, but you've got to find somebody to replace him. And I don't think there isn't one. You couldn't say, you think in European football, that's the guy, because there isn't another Kevin De Bruyne out there. I do think they might have to play differently, slightly different. And again, you see that, teams evolve. David Silva left, Yaya Touré left, Kevin De Bruyne comes in, you play different. And I do think whoever comes in now, if it's Florian Wirtz, you have to mould the team kind of in their best players style, like Liverpool did with Stevie G and Fernando Torres. So whoever comes in, you've got to work to their strengths. And Pep will do that. I don't think they'll play the same as they have the last few years. They'll tweak it slightly around the guys that they have.
As expected, like Company and Silva, he's getting his statue. He's getting the Kevin De Bruyne crescent as well. I know Phil Foden's been there a long time, but are we going to see this like of 10 years at a club like Manchester City again?
Yeah, I mean, it can happen, but it's very, very special people that do it. You've got to have the ability to start with. If you've not got the ability, then you'll be chewed up and spat out quite quickly. You've got to be elite, and he is elite. And he stayed fit, and he stayed hungry, and he stayed at the top, and he's been absolutely brilliant, and he's won everything, and deserves all the accolades that he's had tonight and that he will get for the rest of his life. So fair play to him. It's Manchester City's job now is to unearth the next one, and that is far harder than appears likely.
What a challenge. Michael, Owen, thank you very much indeed. Manchester City winning, that was important first and foremost, as the Etihad Stadium bid farewell for one final time.